y'all hear me all right?
Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast, going virtually again this week. Matt over there is having some technical difficulties. He lives out in the country, so internet can be a bit, up and down sometimes. Hopefully, he'll be back in at some point, but Mike might just have to be you and I carrying the show today. That's no problem. We talk pretty much all of it anyway.
We're fine. We can carry it.
That's right. All right, let's start thing off. Question of the day while Matt's figuring his stuff out. From last Friday, it was a true or false. On October 14th of 2000, underdog Cal won the triple overtime contest against UCLA. The answer to that one was in fact true. And your question of the day for today, October 18th, start of a new week here on YSN Live. Which team holds the NFL record for most rushing first downs in a season? Your options: the Broncos, the 49ers, the Patriots, the Rams, or the Saints. Leave your comments somewhere and come on back tomorrow. See if you get it right. But Mike, as Matt joining back in there. Matt, can you hear everybody?
Matt, you got us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Matt, we got you.
Oh, good.
You're a little frozen, but you know what? We might just have to deal with it today. So, giving you a quick rundown before we get things started on the show today. We're going to talk some things about baseball. The Braves have taken a 2-0 lead over the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Sox and Stros tied at 1 before tonight's matchup. NFL, we got Monday Night Football tonight, and we had some great games from this past Sunday. NCAA, in football, we had a massive upset of the number 2 team in the country, and Georgia continues to dominate. LSU pulled off another big upset as well. A little bit going on with NHL as well. So, without any further ado, with Matt coming in and out as he pleases, let's get into some MLB postseason play here. Mike, right now the Braves are on fire. I mean, you can't really see anybody else in baseball as hot as they are, and they have dominated out on the road here in the NLCS. They dominated at home in the NLCS. They won by 1 point in each game. Now they hit the road for 3 straight in Los Angeles. Do you think they can continue to roll with this momentum off the strength of their bullpen? Both wins have come from the same relieving pitcher, so it hasn't been the starters that have carried it throughout the entire game. They've had to rely on their bullpen. Can they continue to do so now moving forward as they get farther and farther into the playoffs?
So you've kind of seen with both teams so far with the first 2 games of the series that they both are leaning towards their bullpens, which is fine because they're both strong in their bullpen. It's kind of the strong part of both these teams. But as far as the Braves, yeah, they keep up their dominance. They've been hot the last month of the season. They continue here in the playoffs. I think they've only lost 1 game so far, maybe something like that, 1 or 2. But yeah, like you said, they're gonna have to continue that in LA. They're going to 3 straight in the Dodgers. You see with the Braves, they're in the streak that they're on. They're tending to lean more towards close games and winning late. And I wonder if that's going to come to bite them, in Los Angeles. So we'll see. I mean, the Dodgers have a great home field advantage. So it's 2 great teams going at it. So we'll see for 3 straight games here.
I mean, you look back regular season, Los Angeles was fantastic at home. They were one of the best home teams in baseball. And perhaps you see that back here now that they get into, NLCS. The energy is going to be electric in Dodger Stadium. And they are down 0-2 right now in the series. And this is a team that it's strong. They have amazing depth. They have fantastic players, and they've built a fantastic roster with a massive salary. So, I mean, I think they're almost reaching into this point of it might be now or never to get this team to start flowing together because they have gone so deep in some of these contracts and made them so heavy. You have to imagine these next few years, they're going to have to start dropping down on some of them just to kind of, rebuild and be able to bring up some younger guys into the organization and not rely on the same 35-year-old ball players for the next, 4 years because they're retiring here soon. A lot of these major contracts, it's almost starting to feel like now or never for the Dodgers after last season in which, they did it. They got there and they've been there now these last 3 seasons. It feels like how much more can this team really get out of this roster before they have to go start plucking other guys again?
And you can kind of say the same thing about the Braves too. I mean, they were in this situation last year against the Dodgers in the NLCS, up 2-0, then they were later up 3-1 in the series, and they didn't win the series. So you could say it for both teams, but yeah, like you're saying with the Dodgers, it's even though they won last year, it's still now or never because it's LA. all these teams out, basketball, football, they're all winning out in LA, so they want to keep that going. And they definitely can with the strong farm system they have. I mean, all these guys I brought up the last couple of years, but they still have guys like, although he hasn't been playing that much, as Clayton Kershaw. You have veterans like Max Scherzer, so they have these guys, but they're a mixture of youth. So it's still, you can make the argument now or never, because if all these guys leave, I mean, these guys have experience, but let's see if they can keep that going. So yeah, it's now or never for both teams.
Well, Matt, you're a huge fan of your Atlanta Braves. How about you talk a little bit on their 2-0 lead right now in the NLCS over the Dodgers as they now hit the road for the first time in the series to take this matchup to LA. Why don't you talk a little bit about your team here?
It's incredible. Both games winning on a walk-off. Last night, Eddie Rosario, former Cleveland Indian, and this guy kind of sprung to life immediately because he wasn't really producing at all in Cleveland. That's why we shipped him off. Now he's finally playing pretty good base. We had that walk-off last night. And then in that first game, you had Austin Riley, who had the walk-off base hit, scoring Ozzy Albies. That guy's been a stud, right? Mike, you've been watching.
Yeah.
That guy just emerged. And, I've talked about this before. This Braves team looked depleted. They have no Acuna, and then Osuna was suspended for something. I forget what. But, they still had their main core, Ozzy Albies, Freddie Freeman, and then they just had acquired, a couple guys that got it going. Austin Riley was young. I think they brought him up through the farm systems, and he just, started playing fantastic.
Yeah, and Matt, to go off what you're saying, I mean, the guys that they brought in, they're depleted, but they bring in guys like Jock Peterson. They bring in guys like Eddie Rosario.
Peterson.
They get a guy like Charlie Morton in the offseason. So they've addressed the needs that they've had. And even Freddie Freeman was talking about this after they clinched the NLDS, that, hey, we're injured, but hey, we went out and got some guys like Jock Peterson. So
keep in mind Charlie Morton getting the start tonight as well for the Atlanta Braves. Starting pitch on the other side, Buehler for the Dodgers. I think it's a good one. Do you guys see the Braves taking a sweep in Dodger Stadium and winning this thing 4-0? Or do you think Dodgers potentially goes on a nice streak here at home, maybe ties up the series going into Game 5, which would also be in Dodger Stadium? Remember, it's 3 straight in LA in this postseason format. So it's not like NBA where it's 2 at home, 2 on the road. It is, 2 at home, then 3 on the road before you finish the series off Game 6 and 7, both at home for your higher seeded team. Do you think this is going to potentially play into it? If Dodgers, we know they're a great home team, if they run this table at home, make it a 3-2 series before they go back to Atlanta, I think this is going to put Atlanta on the back seat if they don't win it all in LA.
They definitely have to win at least one in LA. It's a tough place to play in LA, but if they want to, have a chance to close out the series, because I don't know if they're gonna have a chance to close it out in LA. They could, but I'd be surprised. But for them to want to bring it home to win it at home, they're obviously gonna have to win at least one if they want to make it easier on themselves. They could still win it if they're down 3-2 going back home, but it makes it easier going home when you're up in the series.
Now, do they play tonight or is it tomorrow? Because
they got the next 2 days after this one. Today's a travel day. Tonight, though, we do have the ALCS going on, I believe. Yes, ALCS. Boston. It's in Boston. The homestand starts now for the Red Sox. The Astros split it at home 1-1. Last game, Red Sox were on fire, hitting the bats 9-5. Astros been consistent. They take home the first game 5-4, and they put up 5 runs in the second. So they're getting one of those situations. They're finding the consistency when it comes to hitting the baseball. Now you have to figure out how to slow down the Red Sox, and one of the most explosive lineups I think we found in baseball with the way they're able to do different things. It's not just home run or bust for them like it was for New York, and that was what lost them in the postseason. It was home run or bust, and they couldn't hit the home runs against good pitching. And so that was why the Yankees lost. Red Sox are completely different. They can go small ball, they can go yard at the same time. So I think you look at Boston right now, how do you slow down this offense in which they can pretty much hit wherever, whenever? They're so unpredictable.
The obvious answer is... Go ahead, Matt.
There's no particular guy either. Any guy on that lineup can just strike and
You got to watch out for a guy like JD Martinez to go yard on you too, because he's a guy that has a big bat.
And JD's a guy that he wasn't even in the lineup for the wild card games. I believe he was injured on the last.
He was injured.
The last series of the year against, I forget who they were playing, but anyway, obviously, Alec, the best answer to slow this lineup down. It's an obvious answer is best, good pitching. You got to locate your stuff. You got to, make these guys work for it, because you talked about they're not like the Red Sox aren't. Their lineup's not overpowering, but they have guys like JD Martinez and Rafael Devers, guys who've won World Series. But then you throw in guys like Hunter Renfroe and
Xander Bogaerts
yeah.
as
So
well.
they're balanced everywhere. So that you got to make these guys work to get earn their hits.
Well, Jose Urquidy up on the mound for the Houston Astros tonight. So far in the postseason, this is his first postseason. He made his debut just 2 seasons ago in 2019. Now here he is thrown in the postseason. Last 7 games, ERA's been up there 4.35 through his 31 innings pitched. He's won both games, but he has allowed 15 runs, in his last 7 starts I think you look at that right now coming up against Boston, a team that loves to hit, a team that loves to just, do whatever on you. I think this is a big chance for the Red Sox to take one here at home to start out their homestand.
Yeah, I mean, it's big because we just talked about the depth of their lineup. Astros are the same way. I've been saying, throughout the playoffs, throughout the regular season, obviously, they had, their lineup produced the most power and most contact throughout the Major League Baseball. So on the other side, they're going just as tough a lineup, so we'll have to see.
It is, and up on the mound for the Red Sox, Eduardo Rodriguez, another young guy. We got 2 young pitchers here that have only been in the league less than, 6-7 years. So you look at Eduardo in the postseason, he's only had 2 games in which he's pitched, and his ERA is at 5.4. So it's a question mark, I think, right now when you look at Boston. You're using a young pitcher, and you love to see young pitchers out there performing in the postseason because it's going to build them up as they go on. But I think at the same time, you look at Eduardo Rodriguez coming into this game, similar question marks as he have on the other side of how is this guy going to perform in the biggest stage. So luckily, he's going to get to start at home, and I think that's the one side you look at this that might be a little bit of an advantage for him, being able to get one of his first few postseason games at home in Boston.
Yeah, and the key for the Astros tonight is to jump on him early. I mean, he has experience in the playoffs. I think he was on that World Series team the Red Sox won a couple years ago. So for the Astros, the key is to jump on him early. He's going to be somewhat comfortable. I mean, you're never comfortable in a playoff game, but you're going to be feeling better because you're at home. But as we talk about in baseball, it doesn't always matter if you're home because anybody can win in baseball.
Yeah, and if you look at Eduardo's postseason career stats, it's a guy who in 3 games that he started, he came out of the bullpen in 7 other games. He was averaging 7.02 ERA in just 16 innings. So I think it's a big opportunity to see a lot of runs here this afternoon. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, but Mike, you said anybody can take it at home, but this is probably one of the hardest places to go into. You're talking about the Cathedral of Boston here, pretty much. This is Fenway Park. So much history and everything has happened in this stadium. Bunch of World Series. I mean, going back to the 1900s. This is the oldest stadium in baseball. I mean, my dad took me there when I was a kid. Walking up to it, it was like I can't even describe it. It was heavenly walking in there.
But
it was surreal. It was amazing.
One thing, you bring up the field of play. Yeah. I mean, Minute Maid Park, where the Astros play, and Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play, they're kind of similar. They have high walls out in left field, and they're short porches. So the Astros are kind of used to that. So it's going to not much of a changeover. But
I think you do look at this, and these 2 stadiums, while the obvious differences are there, I think you also look at it as these 2 stadiums are terribly designed. You look at Fenway, it's an old park. It's built within a city block. So that's why it's got that green monster out in left field. It's that short porch. But then you go straight away dead center. You're not hitting a home run down that way unless you absolutely nuke something. I mean, it goes out to 420, 430 in straightaway center field. And then you have the most awkward right field pull ever. It's so hard to get big hits at this stadium. It's going to rely on both these teams to rely on their small ball, which I think both teams do very well.
Yeah, they do very well.
Definitely agree with you here. And what makes this Red Sox outfield look pretty good because, they have that big wall to kind of lean up against and say, hey, I can kind of climb up on that wall. When you got guys that played in that outfield, guys over the years, Mookie Betts and, Benintendi, those guys have now departed, but the new guys in there can kind of look after that. These guys make big catches out in this. Hunter Renfroe making huge catches out in this outfield. It's good to work with that wall a lot. You can even go opposing teams. I remember the Indians played them. Austin Jackson made an amazing catch over that one of those walls over there. I don't know if you guys remember that at all. But
well, how about when we switch out of MLB here ALCS goes on tonight, tomorrow, and the next day. So make it 3 straight ALCS. We got a 1-day break for the NL. Then they'll take it 19th, 20th, and 21st for Game 6 if necessary. Of course, I mean, the Braves are in a great spot right now to take home a sweep over the Dodgers. It's going to be a tough grind, but let's move it into some football here from this past Sunday. Matt, we're going to start out with your team. The late night game for the NFL lived up to the late night billing. Seahawks,
Absolutely.
without starting quarterback and starting running backs in this game, were still able to take it to the Steelers. They come up just short in overtime. Some controversy down the stretch that even got this to overtime. Big plays, though, from T.J. Watt down the stretch, forcing the fumble over Geno Smith, who, you got to say, had a great game on his end. 23 of 32, 209, and a touchdown. That's great for Geno Smith coming into this football game, having, not played as a starter in how many years? And then you get Alex Collins on the ground. I think they found a hidden gem behind Chris Carson and Collins in this game. 20 carries with 101 yards and a touchdown. And, Metcalf didn't have his best game. And you found Geno Smith, find some of the other guys for the first time in this offense, despite, DK not having his biggest day.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, like you said, DK didn't really have the best day ever, and this was the guy who really needed to step. You had the backup stepping up. Geno Smith hasn't started a game in 4 years. It was 4 years, and the last time, I just like to put this out here, the last time he started was for the Giants, and he replaced Eli Manning, breaking Eli Manning's streak of 200 starts. Now he comes in and replaces Wilson, who had a bunch of consecutive starts as well. And this guy, I mean, like I said, hasn't played in 4 years and came out and did a pretty good job. And they're...
Well, there goes Matt. I think what he wants to go into with this game was, we'll flip it over to the Steelers side while he's coming back, unfortunately. But Big Ben, he had probably one of his better performances of the year. They didn't rely on him too much. He still threw it 40 times, but he went 29 of 40. A lot of small passes, which is what the Steelers offense has been based around a lot this season. And, he put up 229 yards with a touchdown. Najee Harris on the ground. They're finally getting him the carries that he needs instead of just using him as a wideout back. 24 carries for 81 yards for him on this day. Deontay Johnson even got a carry. Kellen Ballage got some down there. But you got to love Deontay Johnson becoming the focal point of this offense. He's getting the bulk of the receptions along with Pat Freiermuth in this game. And you love to see now Big Ben not afraid of going to some of the younger guys. He gets Ray McLeod involved. Chase Claypool gets 2. Ebron gets 2. Everybody was feasting on this offense this past night, just last night actually. And Mike, what were your thoughts from this game? Pittsburgh's defense looks strong down the stretch, but I think they have to be better in the first half.
They definitely do. I mean,
actually, pardon me. The defense was perfect in the first half. They have to be better closing it down. Sorry.
Yeah, they definitely
wrong direction there.
You even look like you were talking about Ben. He looked pretty good last night. Might have been maybe outside the Bills game. I mean, they weren't even good offensively in that game, so you could probably say this is his best offensive performance. I mean, he was 29 of 40, threw for 229 yards. You even heard Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast saying, hey, some of these throws he's making, like the one that Deontay Johnson, he's squeezing some balls in there. They had Ben on some rollouts, so they were finding different ways to get Ben throwing the ball. But then with the Seahawks, they did nothing in the first half. But then they come out, and Pete Carroll said at halftime, we got to run the ball consistently to take pressure off Geno Smith, which they did coming out. That first drive when they scored coming out of the half, they didn't even throw it once. But then you look at Geno's passing numbers. He was 23 of 32 with 209 yards. I mean, you take that as a backup coming in at Pittsburgh against that defense.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure. Obviously, that first half, I think they did rely on him a little bit too much. They found the balance going down to the ground, and, you have to like what they were able to do afterwards in that second half to really put it down, score 20 points, and almost pull off the upset against the Steelers. I don't know if you want to say upset. Almost pull off the big win against the Steelers. This wasn't a team I don't think anyone was really expecting to make this game what it was with no Russ, no Chris Carson, a couple other injuries as well on defense. And here they come, and they almost take down Pittsburgh Steelers in this game. But I think what we kind of talked about last week, this was a must-win game for Pittsburgh. They pull it off in overtime, and now they can sit kind of happy. I mean, I think they're right there now, neck and neck with the Cleveland Browns at 3-3. So, I mean, obviously the Browns that we'll talk about here in a little bit later into the show, they have a ton of injuries. And right now it's a great chance for the Steelers to capitalize on that and move up the polls in the AFC North until the Browns can get fully healthy. Because I think everybody knows once this Brown squad is healthy, they are a dangerous unit. but
Yeah.
they've been eaten up like injuries this year, much like the 49ers were last season. And you look back, we'll talk Browns later here, but Steelers are in a good position right now. A lot of healthy players, and they're looking like they're starting to find some sort of rhythm as the season goes on.
I mean, yeah, you definitely take away the Steelers from where they were just a couple weeks ago. They were 1-3, and I talked about it before the Denver game, as you just touched on. These are against Denver and Seattle. These are 2 games at home. They have to win if they want to stay in it, and they found ways to win them. I mean, last night it didn't seem like they were going to win it at the end, because I often say with the Steelers, and Matt says the same thing because he's a fan of them. They often, at home especially, have letdowns against teams that are lesser than them, and I thought that was going to happen tonight, or last night, but they found a way to win. But then you talk about the Seahawks. We knew coming in their defense isn't what it used to be. Especially the last couple of years, it's been pretty bad. So
how about the Jamal Adams, best in the league or whatever, and then he gets hit in the face with a football and doesn't intercept it?
Yeah, I mean they made stops last night when they had to. They made key stops in the second half because they were coming back from behind, which they had to do. But yeah, going forward with them, they're gonna have to get used to having Geno because we don't know when Russ is coming back. But I think it's fine with them having Geno. They showed some things last night with him that they were able to do. But my concern with them moving forward is their defense, because even though
they're going to have to fight something defensively. Obviously, that second half, they only allowed 6 points on 2 field goals, and then you get to overtime, and it just came off a field goal and a kind of a nothing you can do situation. Quarterback gets strip sacked. It happens, especially when you're working with a backup. It's one of those what if moments. What if I had Russell Wilson in this game? And my roommate last time we were talking, as they got into overtime, he's like, you know what? I don't think Russell Wilson would have done that much. I have a feeling that we might still be in overtime or right here in the fourth quarter down late and just flip the score around if the Seahawks had Russell Wilson in this game. And I kind of agree with him. This was 2 teams that they looked very close. The first half dominated by the Steelers, second half taken away by the Seahawks. And you just have to look at it as one more possession, one good drive by your starting quarterback, and you might be able to take that football game away. So I think you only take the loss with a grain of salt right now for the Seahawks, and you hope they can get back in it. This is a huge team in the NFL that, if we see them go down for an extended period of time, might hurt. This is a big audience being taken in from Seattle. Not a lot of professional sport teams up there, although now they do have the Kraken, but they sit in last place of the NFC West. So, Seahawks are kind of in a similar boat as the Steelers, right? They have dominated this conference for so long. It has been theirs, and now they're starting to fall off again with the Rams on fire and the Cardinals looking unstoppable. So I think they're in the same boat as the Steelers. They can either stick in it or give up as we go forward.
Next week, though, they have some winnable games coming up with the Saints coming up at home and the Jaguars at home. So if they can get wins like that, get back to 500, because their best shot right now is probably the wild card game, because that division's too tough with the Cardinals playing the way they are. If they want to get in the playoffs, it's going to be shooting for the wild card. So those are some games you have to win going forward.
And, they definitely are, but let's move ahead here. Mike, how about your game? Dallas Cowboys now 5-1. They're looking pretty good. They win at 35-29 in overtime over the Pats. Zeke Elliott on the ground, 69 yards. Tony Pollard, 41 yards. I'm loving the duo of them right now. They combined for 27 carries, but I think you got to highlight Dak Prescott in this game. Your boy had 3 touchdowns, 445 yards. Forget the interception. CeeDee Lamb gets the big touchdown to seal it, waves goodbye to the defender. I love it. This was obviously, I think, probably his best game since he's joined the league. 9 receptions, 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dalton Schultz also was on fire. Amari Cooper was getting catches. We're finally starting to see Ezekiel Elliott come out of the backfield again to catch some balls. And you obviously have to love Trayvon Diggs, one of the NFL's best defenders, if not the best defenders right now.
Yeah, definitely. He gets another pick, gets them back into the lead, and then they give it back up. This is probably one of the better games of the weekend, score-wise and entertaining-wise. It probably was, because we talked about the Chargers and Ravens. That was a blowout, but we'll talk about that one. But yeah, out of Dak, 445 yards. This offense, while the defense is improving, and I'm still not sold on it yet, but they're way better than they were last year. This offense is the strength of the team. You even heard Tony Romo and guys like that on the broadcast talking, hey, they can do anything they want with the guys they have on offense. You got to cover guys like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup's out, but once they get him back, and you mentioned the tight ends, they could spread it anywhere they want. And in top of the running game, too. There's a lot to like out of this game. It was closer than I thought it would have been, which I don't know. I thought it would have been close because, Bill Belichick-led teams, they always make adjustments.
Billy B doesn't lose big, but, they lose. They just don't lose big. And I think on the other side of this, as much as you love the Cowboys, I think you have to look at the football game for the Patriots, and I think you love what you see out of their main guys. Mac Jones, 15 to 21, beautiful, love it. I'll take that pick against a strong defense and one of the best defensive backs in the nation. 229 yards and 2 touchdowns for Jones. For him, I think this is one of the best games you can have going up against a strong defense in Dallas, forcing it down to overtime in which you can't close it out. But you know what? Who cares? Damian Harris on the ground had 101 yards with a touchdown. Ramondre Stevenson even had a touchdown in this game. The one thing, they have to find a wide receiver. It just doesn't seem like this Patriots squad has a number one guy. There just doesn't seem to be any sort of flow. So I think coming ahead, you look into the draft right now for the Patriots, they're going to be going out shopping for a wide receiver because I think that's something they desperately need. And then you look defensively, Jawan Bentley, really the biggest guy for this defense in this entire game. 12 solo tackles alone in this game. Kyle Duggar was the next up with 8 solo and an interception. So I like what you're seeing out of the Patriots defense. They do good, and they're going up against an explosive offense with the Cowboys. So I think you'll live with 35 points in a game like this. Obviously, in the future, you want to be better, but this became a shootout. I mean, in the game alone, it was 29 points during the regular game. So I think you live with that as a defense. You just have to find more on this offensive side of things because you put up 29 points in this football game, and if you had a number one wide receiver, I think it's a game that the Patriots might have actually taken.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the defense. With Bill Belichick teams, their defense is normally strong, but with their offense, like you're saying, they hit Kendrick Bourne late for a touchdown. I think that was the one after the Diggs interception, which got them the lead. So they have some solid guys, but like you talked about, they're going to need a guy going forward for Mac Jones. Which for me right now, Mac Jones is fine as a rookie. He's doing most of the right things, but with them, he's going to have some guys go through to get some confidence. I mean, like I said, you talked about Tony Romo in the broadcast. He was saying, hey, this team, they're building. They're not that far off. They just need another piece or two for Mac Jones, or maybe add something on the defense to make them even a stronger team.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. There's obviously a lot of good room to go right now for the Patriots. So you can really only see them going up from here in a game like this. And in the next few seasons, I think Mac Jones is going to continue to find his stride. The question is if the Patriots are going to be patient with him and patient with Belichick. He obviously has a great resume and probably could retire there if the Patriots let him, but you never know. The New England territory is not a place you mess around with being bad for too long. You don't see teams last there very long being bad. I mean, you got to look at, Boston in a similar situation. They don't stay down very long when it comes to baseball. Patriots, who knows? If this is a team that goes down for 1 or 2 seasons, fan base can get upset. Owner gets upset. Bye-bye Belichick and bye-bye Mac Jones. So as much as you want to see this, kind of stick around and grow as much as possible, it's also in a very difficult place. It's a big market team. In a big market area representing, a big part of the country up there in the New England territory, up in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, they have traditions of winning, but to me right now, I feel like
same with the Celtics too.
Yeah, Celtics and the Boston Bruins, they were in Stanley Cup Finals a couple years ago, but I think right now, and going forward, I think Belichick's the right guy for Mac Jones. He wanted him in the draft. Mac Jones is his type of quarterback, so like you said, they're building this thing, so we'll see what they do going forward with that and other key things on the roster.
Well, I think we have to move on one more NFL game before we hit college. Arizona Cardinals, man, 6-0 now, 37-14 win over a very depleted Browns. I'm a Browns fan, and I don't want to be sounding like the guy that's making excuses because I don't think 37-14 really gets changed that much with the amount of injuries the Browns had, but the Browns did have just about every single person out, and they were missing their left tackle, their right tackle. Now Baker went down with a dislocated shoulder. Kareem Hunt's now out another 3 weeks. Nick Chubb might play this Thursday against the Broncos. Jarvis Landry, he's still out. He didn't come back in. Odell went out with an injury in this game. He came back in. But it just seems like everything's going from bad to worse right now for Cleveland. In this game, I think was just a culmination of everything you've seen in this season go bad. And on the other side, I mean, the Cardinals are just on fire. They're unstoppable. And you look at this, Kyler Murray, 20 of 30, 229 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did whatever he wanted in this game. It didn't matter. He didn't even have to run the football again. And, James Conner went 16 of 71, 4.4 yards per carry. Edmonds had 11.5 yards per carry. A.J. Green, their number one wide receiver in this game, kind of came out of nowhere. 5 receptions, 79 yards. Kirk with 75 yards. Hopkins had 2 touchdowns in this game. Everything went right for the Cardinals. And on the other side, nothing was really going right for the Browns. Baker Mayfield, I like Baker, and I think he's going to be that guy eventually. But I don't want to move on to another quarterback because he's shown the ability to be a good quarterback. I just want more consistency out of Baker. I mean, he went 19 to 28, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception without an offensive line, without one of his top 2 wide receivers. So I think you look at him in this game, you're like, it was okay. We need to be a lot better. And he found Donovan Peoples-Jones. He found somebody else to go to 4 times for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, but no one guy was standing out in this football game for the Browns. And that's a big issue they're going to have to solve looking forward if the injuries continue to mount.
Yeah, and especially the injuries on the offense. They're dropping like flies, these guys. I mean, you talk about the running backs, receivers, but, their offense struggled because of injuries mostly. I mean, you saw Baker hurt his shoulder again. You heard him talk about it in the postgame. But how about their defense, though? The last 2 weeks, they've kind of struggled.
I mean, they really have, and there's a lot of good aspects to this defense. They have a solid defensive line, and you kind of saw that in their ability to stop Kyler Murray from really scrambling this game. He carried it 7 times for 6 yards. And you know what? If you can do that, that's a good game for the defensive line. They did what they had to. I mean, James Conner, yeah. I mean, he had an okay day. 71 yards on 16 carries, 4.4 yards per carry. That's fine. If you're a Browns fan, I think you kind of take the run game beating you a little bit in this game against the Cardinals. What you can't see is just the wide receivers busting coverages every other play and going all over the field. It just doesn't feel like this defense, despite the fact that they're adding new defensive backs every year, going out, buying new linebackers and, free agency. They loaded up this defense this year, but it doesn't seem to matter. And I think you almost have to start looking inside the organization because it doesn't seem to matter who you bring onto this defense. Nothing is working. I don't think Stefanski is the problem. I think there's something else within this defensive side of things for the Browns that they need to look at internally because if nothing else is working, then you're the problem.
Yeah, and like I said, their defense has shown, like earlier in the year, I mean, you could argue on who they were playing and the type of opponents they were playing, but they were still getting it done defensively. They were pretty lights out. In the last 2 games, I know they're going up against good offenses, but, I mean, they didn't look like they get any stops on defense. But
no, I mean, they really weren't. And obviously, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals team, you might have to look at as right now the best in football. It's hard to say there's any one team playing better than they are right now. And we're going to look at one of those other teams here in just a second. But any final takeaways from this game from Cardinals or Browns, Mike?
I mean, like I think I believe I picked the Browns. If I didn't on the show, I was thinking they were going to win this game. But I'm pretty surprised the way they got beat up, though.
We actually all picked the Browns in this game.
I picked the Browns, but I wasn't 100% confident in it. I just thought they were going to win because, I don't know, sometimes I like to pick against undefeated teams early in the year because you don't know who they are. And the Browns were at home. But I'm pretty surprised the way they got beat up. They couldn't do much on offense, even though they had injuries, but they were still able to do some things. And I'm surprised about how their defense is playing the last 2 weeks.
They're going to have to get something better going here. But how about we move into Monday Night Football here tonight? Matt, Texas, your predictions here. If you can still hear us. We got the Buffalo Bills taking on the Tennessee Titans here tonight, in which 2 kind of offenses are going up against some great defenses. A number 1 defense in the NFL for the Buffalo Bills, number 8 defense for the Titans. You look at offenses here, 4th in rushing for the Tennessee Titans right now, 12th for the Bills. The passing games for both sides up there in the 20s. So I think you look at this game right now, and it's like, this is a big finding out process, because if Tennessee wins, both teams are 4-2, and you look at this as an even matchup. Buffalo wins, Tennessee falls to 3-3, the same setup we're looking at for the Steelers and the Browns, so they're kind of all sitting in similar spots, still trying to find something to do, and Buffalo would go to 5-1. I think this is right now a huge game for Buffalo to come out there and dominate the way they have this season. I mean, their defense has been unstoppable, and you go back to the one, what I would say at this point in the season was a fluke against the Steelers.
I mean, yeah, both defenses in this game are strong, but you probably give the edge to Buffalo so far, at least in this season. But you look at both offenses; they're pretty similar. I mean, they both have quarterbacks that can throw the ball and move around, scramble for runs, pick up yardage, and they both have good running games, good receiving cores. So this to me, it's going to come down to a matchup of defenses. I personally think this is a game that could be a shootout, and which I often talk about in shootouts, you have to have a defense and come up with stops, and I'd probably give the edge to Buffalo.
All right, well, let's go ahead and make a pick here as we do for Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football. Matt put in our comment section here, the private chat, he picks the Bills, and that's no surprise from him. He's a huge Bills fan, and obviously I'm guessing his reasoning is Josh Allen has been great. He loves them, and I think you have to look at the defense. Matt loves defense. He's a guy that's, always like, yeah, defensive touchdowns. I don't know anybody that gets more excited than him when it comes to defense scoring, so he loves his Bills squad. I think, it's probably one of the few reasons he's going for him. But what about you, Mike, here? You want the Bills?
I know I just talked about the Bills and their defense, and I think if it comes down to defense, it's going to be them because they have a stronger defense. But I think
Derrick Henry.
I'm going with the Titans tonight at home. It's hard to stop Derrick Henry. You know, I talked about with Ryan Tannehill. He's a guy just like Josh Allen that can scramble and make some plays and throw in the air. So
He's been a little down this season, though. I think it's kind of something you have to look at.
And they've had injuries with their wide receivers, but I like the Titans at home tonight.
You know, I think I'm leaning towards the Titans just a little bit too in this game. Despite that number 1 ranking in defense for Buffalo, they're only going up against the number 8 defense too on the other side. So these are two teams fairly evenly matched. And with the fact that the Bills don't really seem to have any one side of their offense sticking out doing anything really great, they've both been, average rushing game, a little bit better than average. But I think you look at this right now, and I think the defense is going to take this on the other side for the Titans. When you have Derrick Henry doing what he's been doing this season, he's been unstoppable. Tannehill hasn't had to throw the football, and that's why their offensive rating is as down as it is, because he just hasn't had to do anything. And you go to the similar situation with Baker Mayfield with the Browns. He hasn't had to do anything because he got guys like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, who he just handed off to 40 times a game, and they do everything, which is why you look at Baker's numbers and they're not good. You look at Tannehill's numbers, they're not good, because these are running offenses. And when you have a running offense going up against a top defense, if you can run the ball and maintain that consistency, you're going to win the game because you have a great defense on your side, able to stop a Bills offense that, has looked kind of mediocre. So, Mike, I think I got to go with you in this one. I think I got the Titans at home.
Yeah, I'm going with Titans at home. Monday Night Football, they're going to win it at home.
Well, we've had a lot of great Monday Night Football games already this season.
There has been, yeah.
How about this upset at home this past weekend? The number 2 Iowa Hawkeyes coming off the win against Penn State.
I called this one.
Yeah, you did. You were the only one that went with it. And Purdue didn't just win by, a field goal at the end. They win it by 17 points on the road in Iowa. Aiden O'Connell, 30 of 40, 375 yards and 2 touchdowns. They didn't even have to run the football, but I think this really just showed the country exactly what everybody knew about Iowa. The offense couldn't score. They were a pure defensive team, and as much as, I love Iowa and I love this defense, and I thought they were really good because of that defense, they got exposed offensively. Spencer Petras with 4 interceptions in this football game. He really struggled, and I think you saw, and he went up against, he came off the win against a really good defense with Penn State, came in with one just as strong as Purdue, and I think this was one of those games, they were riding the high of Penn State, and here came the wall, and they went right into it. I don't think they were expecting the beat down from Purdue as they were, but I think this was one of those games, you looked at Purdue, they weren't good. This wasn't a bad team. They were 3-2. They were sitting right there in 2nd and 3rd of the Big Ten West. They were kind of on the low down after a couple losses. Now they jump right back into the conversation for the Big Ten West with the big win over Iowa. And this game was just insane.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, we talk about with their defense, for how strong it is. Giving up 24 points to Purdue, which they don't have their offense is okay, but it's not anything to look at. Their defense can only not everybody's defense is Georgia, where they just are lights out every single play of every game. They're gonna get tired of carrying the load all the time, which their offense we don't see much out of. We didn't really see much out of them in the Penn State game, but they were able to find some things late. But you talk about Petras, he's not a guy that did a lot. You talk about the 4 interceptions, he's not a guy that moves around a lot, so that doesn't really benefit their offense. And at some point, that's why I kind of liked Purdue in this game. At some point, they're as good as their defense is, it's going to have a lapse where they can't. They're going to get tired from carrying all the time.
And, I think that's exactly what happened. B.J. Goodson, I think, is a guy they have to go to a lot more on the ground in the future. I mean, you look at him in this game, he was great, and when they gave it to him, 12 carries, and he averaged 5.7 yards per carry, but they just stopped giving him the football for whatever reason. It kind of reminds you go back a few seasons ago to when Ohio State got upset by Purdue. I mean, except for the fact that I was on the road, and even worse than this one. You see a team that kind of looked like they went away from everything they had been during the entire season, and they just kind of get flipped on their head and, frankly, shocked by a team right out of the gate. I mean, Purdue didn't waste any time getting into this football game. They come out with a touchdown in the first, touchdown in the second, field goal in the third, and a touchdown in the fourth. They did not let off the pedal, and they took home this win, and causing some massive waves. But I think the one thing we all kind of looked at after this game, the AP poll dropped Iowa out of the top 10. They dropped from 2 to 11th in the nation after losing to what is now number 24 team in the country. And, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I know we're going to bring up the Alabama parts we were talking about yesterday. Them losing and only dropping to 5th, and Iowa dropping out of the top 10. My only thing is I'm not sticking up for anybody, but my only thought of that is maybe that, because Texas A&M was ranked at the beginning of the year and Purdue wasn't. I mean, that's my only guess. I have no.
Well, I mean, yeah, you look at it. I think the only other thing
and
you
the
can
way they
look
got
at
dominated
is
in this game too.
yeah, they were dominated, and Alabama loses by 3 at the end on a field goal, and maybe that's the one way you look at it. But I don't think you can rationalize a 9-rank drop there just out of Iowa losing one football game, especially with the way they've played the rest of the season, considering the fact that they also have a top 10 win over a team that the AP poll has, I believe, at number 6 or 7th. Here, I have it written down right here.
7th they store.
Yeah, Penn State sits at 7th right now, so this is a team that has a win over number 7 Penn State, just last week, and now you drop them right out of the top 10. Tell me, who has Alabama beaten in the top 10?
I can see Iowa, even though they beat Penn State.
I can see them falling to like 8 or 9.
Yeah, it's 8 or 9 behind Penn State, but I don't see them dropping out of the top 10. If they lose and look like this again, yeah, I'd definitely drop them even further, but I don't know.
I don't think you can rationalize putting them behind a team, say Michigan. Michigan is sitting right up there at number 6 in the AP poll. Who has Michigan beat? No one. The one loss by Iowa looks better than everything Michigan has done this season, and frankly, you could go with the same way with Ohio State. Who have they beaten? Ohio State hasn't beaten anyone. The one ranked matchup, they lose to Oregon. And as much as I'm a Buckeye fan, the one loss to Purdue, who is a top 25 team, I think looks better than the loss to Oregon when they have that win over Penn State.
And here's my thing. And again, like you just said about your team, I'm putting my fandom aside here. Penn State and Michigan were both off this week. Do you really put Michigan over Penn State when they were behind Penn State, even though both teams didn't play? I don't agree with that one. And Michigan, like you said, they're 6-0, but really, who have they played? And like you said about Ohio State, yeah, they've looked, dominant the last few weeks, but who have they really played in those couple games?
Same with Oklahoma. Oklahoma has the one win over Texas, and that's their season so far.
And like you said, Penn State got help this weekend because their best win was probably the Auburn win, and Auburn beat Arkansas at 17, so that makes that win look better, but neither of these teams really have anything impressive. And
now you look at Arkansas on that, and it's not really that great of a win for Auburn because Arkansas's biggest games, they've looked crap. They've been awful.
And Arkansas's lost 2 in a row, now 3 in a row after this week. So
right.
I don't know. In the middle of this top 10 and towards the end of the top 10, it's kind of, I guess, a toss-up because
I think the one thing you like to see is that here in a couple weeks, the AP poll doesn't matter. We get to throw that out the window, and we'll get to see what the NFL or the College Football Playoff Committee deems our top 10 teams. And with that, I have a feeling Iowa will jump back in. I think we'll see Ohio State fall down. I think Cincinnati will fall down as well in those rankings. I have a very strong feeling number 1 is going to be Georgia, number 2 is going to be Oklahoma, and number 3 is going to be Alabama, with 4 being kind of the toss-up spot in which perhaps they put in Michigan or Michigan State, Oklahoma State, depending on who comes out at that point in the next few weeks. So.
Are you forgetting about Cincinnati, or are you not believing in them?
No, I believe in Cincinnati, but look at what the College Playoff Committee has done so far. They have not even thought about putting a group of 5 team in the top 5. So,
and like I
think that's the one. I think that's the one thing. I think Cincinnati is going to get moved out of that top 5 because of that.
Yeah, and I've been
despite the win over Notre Dame.
Yeah, I've been sticking up for their resume. Indiana's not what they are, but you're going on the road at a Big Ten venue when you're not.
Keep in mind, Indiana just almost beat Michigan State this past weekend too, so you have to look at that. Despite the fact they lost, it was a 5-point game against a top 10 opponent.
Yeah, Cincinnati has a better resume than non-Power 5 conference teams have had in the past, but it's like they've said on Saturday. I was watching ESPN in one of the games. One of the analysts was saying they're going to have to blow every single team out that they play in.
And they have so far in conference. Temple, UCF, they blew them.
Yeah, and they're going to have to continue to do that if they want to, get in and stay in that conversation. So that's what they're going to have to do.
No close games can happen really for Cincinnati. They can afford maybe 1 or 2. 1 or 2 in conference, and that comes against SMU.
Obviously,
SMU and Houston, I think those are the 2 teams they can come close to.
Yeah, obviously just worrying about winning, but you're going to have to blow teams out if you want to.
Well, how about this one? They continue to blow teams out. The number 1 Georgia Bulldogs going over Matt's Kentucky Wildcats here, 30-13, and they were just on fire in this game, man. Stetson Bennett, he's cooking up something with James Cook as his running back, and everything about this game for Georgia, they can just continue to dominate here. What more can we say about this Georgia team than we haven't said already? They have just been on fire, unstoppable, undeniable. Every phrase you can use, that has been Georgia so far this season.
You really can't find any words. They replace quarterbacks, they switch up quarterbacks, and they haven't missed a beat there. You could probably argue they've gotten better since they made that change. And their defense, what else can you say about it? What was the score in this game again? I don't know.
30-13.
So they're at what, like 50 points around 50 points allowed the whole year just for their defense. I mean, and we're halfway through. I mean, you can't say anything else about them.
Yeah, I mean, just fantastic. I think Georgia, come when this college football playoff poll comes out, so long as they remain undefeated, is the unanimous number one team in the country right now.
Yeah, definitely. And on so many levels, like we just talked about, offensively and defensively. They're doing it at all levels. I mean, that's why they're number one.
Well, we had some big news come out of LSU this weekend after they pull off the upset against formerly ranked number 20 Florida Gators when they win it 49-42. LSU, I mean, they played fine in this game. You look at Tyron Davis-Price, he played fantastic. 36 carries, 287 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Fantastic game for him. But we found out after this game, Ed Orgeron set to leave LSU after this season. And for some reason, I just can't rationalize that at all. I mean, he brings in national championship crew, one of the best teams in college football the other year, and now 3 years down the line, he's getting the boot out the door. I mean, I just don't understand this. And I think you have to look at the SEC, the unrealistic expectations they get out of these teams when, you know, they win championships. You look at the 5 of the last 6 teams, not named Alabama, who have gone to the national championship. Only one of them still has their head coach, and that's Kirby Smart from Georgia. The other ones, I believe, were Auburn, obviously now LSU. I think Florida was up there as well. I mean, you just look at this. The unrealistic expectations coming out of the SEC is ridiculous right now for a coach in Ed O, who's less than 5 years removed from a national championship and one of the best college football teams ever with multiple NFL draft picks coming out of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was a guy that got Joe Burrow to come to LSU, which won them a national championship. Just 21 months ago, they won a national championship.
Yeah, it's not like this is something like that's that far out of the way.
Yeah, it's, you know, and they still recruit well down there in LSU. I mean, I know from their standards since they won the national championship, I believe their record's 9-8 or something like that. So there's still a winning record, but it's not what you're used to at LSU. I guess that's why they decided to part ways. I mean, last year you could say last year didn't count it counted, but it wasn't the same for a lot of teams. I've often said last year it was a down year for Penn State, but it wasn't a normal season. So you can kind of scratch that one. But, I mean, this year, I mean, they're not playing terrible, so I don't really understand.
No, they're not. And you know what? Look at their 3 losses, right? Number 15, Kentucky, just week before. Okay, top 25 team. Number 19, Auburn, they lose by 5 2 weeks ago. So if they take back-to-back losses there against 2 top 25 teams, then you go back to the start of the season against a then top 15 UCLA Bruins team. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the losses so far. These aren't bad. These are top 25 opponents. Who cares if you don't have the team right now that's, you know, contending? Because with a guy like Coach O, you're going to get there. I don't see why they moved off him, and frankly, I don't know if we ever will. I hope Edo goes out to his next program and absolutely dominates. And frankly, it's a rough road ahead right now for LSU down the stretch. Ole Miss next week, Alabama after that, and then they finish the season against Texas A&M. So it's a long road and perhaps a bowl game in their future if they can win a few, maybe 1 or 2 of those. But they do have Arkansas and L.A. Monroe as their other 2 games. And Arkansas's no pushover. They haven't played good against good teams. But we'll see how Arkansas does in that game. So it's a tough stretch down the line for LSU. And I think they got the shaft of the SEC schedule this year. And apparently it's going to be Edo's downfall.
Yeah, and looking at potential spots for him, you know, as a head coach, can you see maybe taking a USC job? Or, I mean, he's recruited well in LSU. Why can't he do it out in California? So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. I think
there needs to be some big recruiting out of, you know, California. They have been just depleted these last, you know, 2 decades by the SEC, by the Big Ten, by the Big 12. Everyone has taken something from California besides California. So perhaps Edo to USC could be the biggest move potential. But how about we move out of college football here and wrap up the show with a little bit of NHL discussion. And why don't we go down quickly here? NHL, we're quickly into the season. You know, the weekend, it gave us a few nice games. You obviously had the Senators versus the Stars and went 3-2. And then Saturday's games, a lot of close ones, a lot of fun scoring. And I think we come out of this and you start wondering who's going to take hold early in this season. Matt's normally, you know, our NHL guy. And right now, you look at the league. Pittsburgh sits first place right now in the entire NHL at 2-0 with the 1 overtime game as well. They have 5 points. Carolina, Minnesota, Columbus, Florida, Buffalo, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, and Tampa Bay also with 4 points. So a lot of, you know, teams kind of bumping for position right now Mike, I know neither you or I follow them too much. What are you thinking right now? Who's taken over so far in the young NHL season?
I mean, I know it's early and we've only played a couple games, but you could still say Tampa Bay is still defending champs. They lost to Pittsburgh opening night, but they bounced back with 2 wins, so they're 2-1. Some other teams with some good records. I mean, Colorado's 1-1. They're last year they were in it till the end, so they're a team that's normally strong and they're normally in it. But I mean, Pittsburgh, you got to give them credit. They're 2-0 with a tie, and I mean the injuries they've had out. I mean, they got Jake Gensel back in the second game, but they still have Crosby and Malkin out, their 2 leaders. So if they can hold that down till the end, I mean, they'll keep themselves in it, and they're always in it. The Pittsburgh Penguins, 15 straight years, I think, in the playoffs. But yeah, there's some other teams that, I mean, Buffalo's 2-0, surprising there. They've been bad the last few years, but it's still early. But we're kind of seeing some teams that are hanging in at the beginning.
And you know what? I think the one side I look at it, obviously, I'm not a guy that follows NHL too closely, but what I do follow is when Columbus is good at hockey. And, it's very up and down in Ohio when it comes to hockey. And I think you look at them right now, they are one of those teams that does sit at 2-0, and they come off, some pretty good games from that opening week. And I think it's one of those teams, they're not going to be the favorite at any point to win an NHL championship. But what they do get favorited as sometime, one of the biggest potential upset teams. They're always there to make your series go haywire. And I think that's one thing you got to look at. If Columbus just maintains, that even-keeled setup they've been having so far, obviously still early, just 2 games in, but you can imagine if they continue to run it like they do and win how they have and, play decently, come postseason time, this is a team that loves to cause chaos. And I think that's kind of the one thing I want to look out for as we get down into the NHL season, if Columbus can maintain that, winning nature.
Yeah, I mean, they're 2-0 right now, like you said, and they're only a point behind Pittsburgh in the Metropolitan Division. So they're there early, and let's see if they can keep it going towards the end of the year. I mean, you have Carolina between them and Pittsburgh. Yes, Washington behind Columbus, and they're always a playoff team. Then you got stronger teams like the Rangers, so we'll have to see if they can hang in it. And I think they can. They've done it in the past. Let's see if they can do it again.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. But, Mike, how about we finish this show off the way we normally do on Mondays? One final segment without Matt here on the show. Unfortunately, internet's still out for him, so we're just going to have to take this one away ourselves here. This week's Beast of the Week.
So I believe Matt gave it to TJ Watt. That's what the notes say.
Yeah, Matt said, hey, if I kick it back on, give it to TJ Watt. Went 6 tackles, 1 assisted tackle in this game, but 2 sacks. I think you give it to him down in the biggest moment. Came in an actual beast in overtime, getting back there, multiple pressures on Geno Smith. Then they force him out of the pocket, and he gets back up there, chases him down, gets to the huge strip sack that sets up the Boswell field goal. I think you just look at that game, he was all over the field. Despite the fact he doesn't get a ton of sacks in this game or a ton of tackles, he forced a lot of pressures on Geno Smith that helped this defense out in that second half and in that first half. So I think you got to love right now TJ Watt and that Steelers defense, and he's this week's Beast of the Week.
Yeah, I mean, you could even talk about over the course of the whole game. I mean, he had some tip passes in the first half. He was Seattle's offensive line wasn't playing that good, so he was able to get some holes in there and get some tip balls. Then he was able to do it again in overtime. I mean, he showed why he's the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. Yeah,
that's for sure. And, I do want to give out a high school Beast of the Week from Matt and I's games. We saw 2 pretty good ones between Garfield and Brookfield, and then Valley Christian and Wellsville. 2 fierce competitive games, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow when Matt's hopefully back on the show. I do have to give out one, honorable mention at least for Beast of the Week. Cam Davenport, the running back for Valley Christian. He was unstoppable in their second half, and they brought him into the Wildcat, and he just started running over. He won that game more than anybody else in what was a tied ball game at halftime. So honorable mention goes to Cameron Davenport of Valley Christian. Got to put that out there because he was unstoppable in that game.
I got one too that I forgot to mention in the hockey segment.
Go ahead.
Pittsburgh Penguins coach Mike Sullivan, winningest coach in franchise history. I mean, winningest coach. He's got 2 Stanley Cup championships. He's been in the playoffs every year. He's been head coach. So that's another Beast of the Week. He hasn't playing good right now to start the season out, so let's keep it going.
We'll see. Well, that's Mike Wolfgang. Matt Morrison hopefully will be joining me back tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll just be myself here on the Casual Sports Podcast. But to start out the week, that's going to do it all from us here on Malik. That's Mike. We'll see you next time here.
still here.
Yeah, we are. Still here. Still waiting to say adios, amigos.
Wrapped up pretty early, though.
Yeah, we did, It happens. Matt's gone, He normally fills up that last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
He fills in there.
That's his role.
Adios. Signing off. I'm Alec. That's Mike. Bye. Yes, Matt, we know you can still hear us. We're still live.
Yeah, he was dropping some comments in the chat, so he was keeping up. We've seen you all show, so don't worry.
Well, Mike, since we're still live, what's your favorite kind of pumpkin flavoring thing?
Like
Because I got this pumpkin smash from Jamba Juice.
Is it
pretty
good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I
also got like a pumpkin spice coffee in here too, so I'm all about the pumpkin.
You got to go with the pumpkin spice coffee, but I also got to go with the pumpkin ice cream too.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Good.
Do you like pumpkin roll though? Pumpkin roll's great to have around.
Pumpkin rolls too.
Yeah.
Pumpkin cookies. I like pumpkin everything.
Dude, pumpkin's just great.
It's the best time for it.
Yeah, Aldi's got pumpkins on sale for $2.50 right now too.
Those are the ones you picked up.
Yeah, one of them's already rotted though. Been a
Awesome.
week. Well, peace out here from the Casual Sports Podcast.
Matt's still talking hockey.
We're heading out.
So.
I'm Alec. That's Mike. Bye. Peace off. Signing off here from Youngstown. Adios.
We can
See
keep going
ya.
though. Matt wants to keep talking hockey. It looks like.
Hey Mike, Canucks have a good young core. Matt doesn't think Edo's going back to USC. They didn't give him the job before when he was interim. He thinks it's dumb though that you cut the guy loose when he's still rebuilding. So, a few comments here from Matt. He did say go Bills.
They lost a lot after Burrow and all them left, so
Yep.
One of the best teams ever. It's hard to replace.
All right, signing off here, Casual Sports Podcast. We'll see y'all tomorrow.